Moya Ulight, Moya Ubright. Welcome to another Moya live stream. I'm going to give you guys a couple of seconds to get into the room. I know that you're waiting for us. Thank you so much for all the support. We do see you. The numbers are going up. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. So, sometimes we have live streams and we have conversations with the clever kids in class so that they can also make us the clever kids. Recently, I don't know if somebody sent me the video or what happened, but there is a content creator who is breaking things down and saying all the things that mainstream is not saying. And it's important for us to have these voices that kind of like shift the narrative from where it is. So I found out he's a YouTuber. I went to his channel, I hunted him down, went to his Instagram, went everywhere, email, hunting this man down to find out how can he contribute his voice to our education. We've got Mr. T from African Point of View. I'm going to add him to the screen now. Please let us welcome him. Hi, Mr. T.
Thank you very much. How are you doing today?
Oh, we are so well. We're so excited to be hanging out with you. It was so nice to discover your content and to see good. Oh my gosh! Okay, Bakona, Bakona. We get a lot of below average content a lot of the time, and it's very boozy, very shabeen, and that's where people are gathering around. But I think that, sorry about that. I didn't realize my phone was on.
No problem.
It's important for us to get the content that matters. So, I mean, G20 just happened. Let's start there because, often I feel so uncomfortable about this G20 conversation because, firstly, I'm worried about the fact that why are we the only Black in the room? Because for me, that's always like red flags, scary. What's happening? Are we taking ourselves to the altar? So can you unpack the G20 for us? And should we be in there? Where are the other Africans?
Yeah, no, true. A lot of people are very skeptical. I could see when the G20 was happening that a lot of people were saying they are selling us out. People are coming here to take our resources. These people are selling us out. And it's understandable because I realized that a lot of people in South Africa or in Africa in general are not really into geopolitics. So they don't follow all of these things that are happening all across the world that affect us on a daily, So it happened that now the entire world was now coming into South Africa, and a lot of people got scared to say, why is Europe here? Why are the Americans here? Why is everybody interested in South Africa all of a sudden? Are they here for our minerals? And it's understandable. You shouldn't be angry at people who are asking questions. The best thing you can do is to give them some of that knowledge, which is the reason why I started the African Point of View a couple of years back. It was to share some of these things that are happening in the world and make people realize that those things affect us. So pointing at the G20, for example, a G20 is just a grouping of countries that came together after the Asian financial crisis that happened in 1999 to say that, you know what, when these things are being decided in the room, I think we also want to be there. So as for your question, when you're saying, should we be there? Are we taking ourselves to the altar? No. We are trying to make sure that when decisions are being made, we are in the room and we can say, no. This decision doesn't sit well with us. This decision here is going to exploit us. Because when you're not in the room, you are on the menu. That's what they say. So it's a good thing that we are there as South Africa. And as you could see, we also invited other African countries to come and participate so that they get to hear as well when these discussions are happening, because they also get affected by this. So us being in the G20 is not just a benefit to us as South Africans, it's a benefit to the rest of Africa. Because I don't think we will be comfortable sitting there when discussions are being made and they're going to impact Zambia or Congo, or they're going to impact Zimbabwe, and we're just going to keep saying yes. We're going to object. We're going to say, no, that's unfair. And case in point, a lot of the things that were in the themes were actually to address those issues that affect Africa that had never really been discussed. One of those things, for example, just to put it out there, it was that when African countries are being given debt from the IMF and the World Bank, we always pay more in interest. And when we check at the things they look at, we realize that there are European countries who are at the exact same category as African countries who are paying less, which means that the poor countries of Africa are being given more of a burden when it comes to paying back those loans, which put us in a spiral. It means that we can't pay back the loan, our rating gets degraded, and then the interest go up, and then we can't pay back the loan, and so on and so forth. So we keep getting into this negative spiral, racing all the way to the bottom. So being in the room as South Africa, we were able to say, to convince the entire world, except for the United States, of course, they didn't come. And the reason why they didn't come is because everything we were trying to change affects their power. So the United States controls the World Bank and the IMF. Both of those two were the two places in which many countries get their loans from. And South Africa was saying it's not fair that you charge more the African countries who are poor, and they end up not paying those loans back and they end up defaulting. So us being in the room allowed us to convince the Europeans, and this was a huge thing because remember, the Europeans are on the receiving end of the benefits of these institutions. These institutions were made after World War II. So to get them to say, okay, we agree with you, Africa, I think you're right, we should change these things, was a huge win for us as the Global South, being led by South Africa. So being there in the room, having those countries come to South Africa and us being able to convince the Global South to present our case and then get to convince them, that was a huge win. So there's a lot of other areas where we won. I mean, hosting it, first of all, was an amazing thing, being able to cater for all of the leaders and their wives and their staff. All of them need to eat, all of them need to sleep, all of them need to be transported to the venue and from the venue with no incident. You never heard that there was an accident against the cars of Macron or anything like that. We only had 2 incidences, which was just some people were protesting and some guy wanted to hijack the police, I think. But other than that, the event went amazingly well. On top of that, we got our themes through and we got them approved. So that was a huge win. So as for your question, should we be in the room? Yes, we should. And we shouldn't just be in that room. We should be in any room where decisions are being made. Be it in the IMF, we should be able to say, why are you giving Zambia a loan and giving them 25% interest, whereas Ecuador is being given 15%? That doesn't make a lot of sense. And that allows us to have a voice. We are in BRICS now, we have a voice. We are in D20, we have a voice. So all of these places where we have a voice, they're not going to put us on the menu because we're going to be there on the table. So that's what I would say regarding the G20. You shouldn't be afraid that we are there. It's a good thing that we are there.
I'm so happy that you're unpacking this for us. What was actually discussed? Because it sounds like you did follow it. A lot of us on the ground, we just see the flash and the, so we don't really get into the content. Where was this meeting? What was happening? What did they discuss? And because it sounds like, oh, okay, so it's a good thing. So can you unpack it some more for us?
Yes. So one of the things that happens through the G20 is something called the B20. So the B20 is for the business. The G20 itself is for the leaders. So this thing happens throughout the year. It's not just an event that happens for 2 days. So ever since 2024, December, we had taken presidentship, if I can call it that, of the G20. So that means that we're starting now to invite ministers, to invite heads of central banks to come to South Africa and to discuss these things with us. That's why you saw that we signed the declaration in the beginning, because all of these things were already agreed to and everybody had already said, yes, we agree with you. So some of the things that we discussed there, first of all, it was the loans, just like I mentioned, from the World Bank and the IMF. Why is Africa treated unfairly? Because, of course, they're going to say, no, it's because of the risk. But we actually checked that these are the things you look for. And if we're checking the score, we have countries in Europe who have the exact same score as countries in Africa, but they're given loans at a much cheaper interest, which means that we are being punished just for being African. And that's unfair. The other area was investments in green energy and things like that. So the world is changing. We are literally trying to move away from oil and coal. There's nothing you can do to stop that. You can slow it down, but you can never stop progress. So before, we were never positioned in a place where we benefit from transitions. The first industrial revolution, we were not even there. Second industrial revolution, we were just watching. But now with this one, Africa is saying, we want to play a role. The minerals that you're going to use in your solar, in your wind turbines and all of that, we have those. So we don't just want to ship them out to your countries. We want to be part of the manufacturing. We want to be part of the skills. And that was a very good point because we get to benefit from that. We have those raw materials, but most of them, we ship them out as ore. We ship them to China, we ship them to wherever, where they get to become products and they sell them back to us at a much higher price. So Africa was saying that it's unfair that you leave us out from something that is going to affect us in the future. So instead of you guys just coming and taking all of the raw material and making the product in your countries, we would like for you guys to beneficiate. So to beneficiate is to add more value inside the country that you're taking that raw material from. For example, let's say we are digging up manganese or any other mineral, right? Instead of just putting it in a container, send it to China, convert it from that, process it, make it a product, and then ship out that product. That creates jobs for us. That creates tax for our government. That creates investment in infrastructure. If you're going to build that processing plant, you're going to need to build a road that is going towards it. They're going to be our mothers and fathers selling food on the outside. So this creates jobs and secondary jobs and tertiary jobs. There's going to be people who are supplying that company with things, supplying them with doors, with paint, all of those things. Those are jobs. So that was the second point, to say we want beneficiation when it comes to the things that we are shipping out. We are tired of just sending out raw materials. And what South Africa did here by inviting most of these African countries was to create a group of people who is very difficult for the other side to say no to. If we went there alone and we said this, they were going to just say, we'll just get it from Zambia. So what are you going to do? Nothing. But we got Zambia here. We got the Congo here. We got everybody here. So where are they going to get it from if all of us are speaking in one voice? So that was another part of, I think, the brilliance of the strategy that was used by the South African government to say, let's not just go there alone. Let's get everybody else who is affected so that they get to see if these people say no, they're saying no to all of us. Then we can act as a collective. And as you saw, they all said yes, except for the United States, because they are realizing that this takes away from their power.
I love this because, you know, you are debunking all of the fears. You're helping us understand, because, you know, we just see G20 and then there's also that elitist element and dynamic to all of it. Yeah, so as the people who are not in the elite, we are always worried which we are going to be the victims in the end of this. So how are the poor people benefiting? Because I think it's important for the elite to make sure that everybody's eating.
Exactly. And let me bring it to that point. So throughout the past couple of years, South Africa has created things called special economic zones. Now, these are areas within South Africa. I think we have a couple of them in every province. So you don't necessarily need to move to another province to be near this special economic zone. And this is based on what we can find inside that province. For example, in Limpopo, there's a lot of mining areas that have not really been properly like mined, like places where we know that there's resources, but we haven't been able to build a mine. So in those areas, they're being called special economic zones. So these are places where when outside companies want to come and invest, we make it easy for them. So we cut the red tape. We're not going to ask for them to bring us 15 different certificates of this and this and this. We go and do the environmental testing before they even get here, and we get all of those approvals. The moment they land, we say, look, you are allowed to do this, you're allowed to do this, you can start tomorrow. The reason why that is important is because when, as an investor, if you're going to invest in another country, you need to ask yourself, how long will it take for me to get a return of my investment? How much money am I going to spend? But if you go to a country and they say, don't worry, we already covered all of those. If you come in here and invest, you can have your mind running in a year and a half. Then that becomes an incentive for outside investors to come and invest. And when they come and invest, remember, roads need to be built, water needs to be supplied. All of those are jobs. So we have special economic zone in every single province in South Africa. You can look around and you can Google them, and they're there online. If you go and check, you'll be able to find where are these special economic zones. Some of them in places like Northern Cape, there's a lot of sunlight there. most of those ones there are about green energy, solar panels and things like that, because that area is less densely populated. And because of that, we're able to build a lot of solar panels and things like that. And then we have other areas that have different projects that are happening over there. So this is how a person who's like maybe at home sitting wondering, how do I benefit? They get to benefit from that. It's not just that, they also get benefit when the government, when the country benefits, when the GDP and the economy start working better, the government can tax it a little bit more, and that money can be used to build things like schools, fix roads, and so on and so forth. So as a person who's like sitting at home, wherever you are, there is something that you get out of this. It might not be directly to you. Someone is not going to come and give you money, but there might be a job opportunity for you or for your cousin or for somebody else. And over time, with these things being built, there's going to be suppliers that need to supply them. There's going to be people who are selling food on the outside. All of those are steps and ways in which the country gets to benefit. Not only that, when our grid becomes stable and we have electricity that is enough and we don't have load shedding, everybody gets to benefit. But this is not going to happen tomorrow. It doesn't happen like that. It takes years, it takes investments, it takes a little bit of patience to say, which direction are we going? I was checking the stats right around the G20. Just before, I think it was a week before the G20 commenced, the stats of jobs came out. And for the first time in a very long time, I think in about 8 or 9 years, we had seen the graph of unemployment level up and start to dip. So that means that we created more jobs than the ones that were lost. South Africa, I think, created about 280,000 jobs in the last quarter. Most of them were created in these special economic zones. These special economic zones are all funded by investments that come through things like the G20 BRICS and other things like that. So those things can benefit people who are sitting at home. It's just that it might not benefit you directly. And if it doesn't benefit you directly, it doesn't mean you're not benefiting. You're still going to benefit with having enough electricity. You're going to benefit with having a couple of roads that have less potholes. Now, we can talk about corruption, but that's a different story. That's us now just sabotaging ourselves. You can't blame the G20 and the investors for maybe people stealing money that was supposed to be used for other things. We need to look at these things separately. So we shouldn't say, oh, but they're going to eat the money. But that's not the fault of China or the fault of Europe. Europe is trying to invest. China is trying to invest. If we allow our leaders to eat the money, that's on us and our leaders. We need to deal with that on a separate note. So as for your question, yes, if the country benefits, everybody benefits.
You raised something so important now, because we are watching on the side. Kamo, there's BRICS, we must support BRICS. Then there's the American influence, and then there's the European influence. What's happening, and where does what's happening?
Yeah. South Africa finds itself in a very interesting position right now, and I don't think this is going to come back anytime soon. We have the winds changing. The winds always used to blow to the west. Everybody who used to benefit were Western countries. It was Europe and the United States, and we were only left with scrambling for the mere things that are left, like the leftovers. But now the winds are changing from blowing to the west to blowing to the east. China is rising. The global south is rising. Things like BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation, all of those things are rising. Now, this puts South Africa and Africa in a perfect position. Geographically, first of all, we are right in the middle. So before the winds change from blowing this way to this way, they blow towards us. So where we are sitting right now, we have three major groups. We have the Americans, the Europeans, we have the East, which is India and China. Now, the Europeans no longer trust the Americans, mostly because of Donald Trump. So they are realizing that America is not a trustworthy partner. They also don't fully trust China. That's why they've been pulling a lot of their production from China, because every now and then China uses its ability to cut off supply to Europe to pressure the Europeans. So that means that the Europeans need allies. They're desperate for allies. So the moment that you find that people are desperate, that's when you step in. That's when you go, hey, you can come and invest in us. We're not going to do you the same way that the Americans did. Don't worry, we're not going to do to you what you think the Chinese will do to you. Come and invest here. Come and build. And South Africa has taken that opportunity. the European Union invested 11.5 billion euros. That's about 232 billion rands in South African green energy. The reason they're doing that is because Europe is affected by climate change a lot. Many people were dying here. I think it was this past summer. About 3,000 people died just because of the heat. So they're trying to make sure that they can do production outside of the continent. And where can they go? Africa. In Africa, which country is the best when it comes to infrastructure and everything else? South Africa. So that's why they came and invest in Africa. Now, we should never be afraid of investments. Of course, we should do our due diligence. Of course, we should check the contracts, but don't be afraid and say, no, don't come in and invest here. When they come in and invest here, they're going to be stealing the money. That's not necessarily true. How did China become rich? China attracted all of those investments from America and Europe. They went and invested in China, and China became rich. This is our moment. So we are right in the middle when it comes to East, West, and North. Everybody is saying we need allies. China wants some minerals. China wants influence in Africa. Europe doesn't trust America. It doesn't trust China. It wants allies, and it's coming to Africa. The United States at the moment, they don't want it much to do with Africa. They just want minerals, but they're not coming to invest. So we can't count them. So let's count on China and Europe. Let's use them against each other if we have to. If they're coming and saying we can give you 10 billion for this, you can say, but the Europeans said they'll give us 12. And they're also coming with this. And then when the European says, we would like to invest in this, you're like, but China said they can give us this much. Let's leverage that position that we find ourselves on. Let's not overdo it, of course, but we should get something out of it. So we are in a perfect position right now when it comes to balancing the East, the West, and the North. And if we play our cards right, by the end of this shift from the West to the East, we will be developed.
Are you suggesting that South Africa has got the most bargaining power on the continent? And
yes.
Go
on.
And then, because the thing is, we're hearing a lot about fast-growing economies in Africa, Recently we heard about Kenya. I don't remember what the other one was. What does that mean? And if we don't get, because you know how African Americans used to get a propaganda version of Africa.
Yes.
So when we say we've got the best structures, we don't know, because we don't know outside South Africa. We don't know other African countries. We don't know what's happening in Ghana or Egypt. That was Egypt, the other growing economy. So are we really what we think we are?
So if I can tell you the truth, yes, Africa is really who we think we are. If you check the numbers when it comes to roads, the roads network in South Africa is probably more than 4 or 5 other African countries inside SADC combined. That's the road. If you look at the rail, it's even worse. So our entire country is well connected. And that's the one thing that you need. Even ports, if you look at the port in Durban, if you look at the port in Eastern Cape, the port in Cape Town, those are one of the biggest ports. Actually, the one in Durban is the biggest port in Africa. Some of the things that are exported from this country in SADC, they go through Durban. So they export through our infrastructure, because our infrastructure at this moment in time is one of the best in Africa. Now, if we leverage that, you must always think from a position of an investor. If you're an investor and you want to invest in manufacturing, and you are being told that if you invest somewhere in Zambia, for example, I'm sorry to my Zambian friends, I'm not picking on you here, but if you want to invest in Zambia, you need to first build a road and a rail and a port. But if you're investing in South Africa, you don't need to build any of those. As an investor, you're not going to choose a place where you need to build all of those 3 things. You're going to say, no, it's fine, we'll stick to South Africa. So because our infrastructure is better than everywhere else, the amount of money that they need to put in to invest when they need to build their manufacturing in South Africa is far less. And that is an incentive. Now, we have created special economic zones. That's even more incentives. Now, if we look at an example like China, China also used special economic zones, by the way, to become rich. It literally said to the Western countries, come and build your factories here. The labor is going to be cheap. We don't even need a lot of tax. We'll just take the workers and you're going to pay your half, but you can pay half of the tax for the first 5 years. And all of them went there, because capitalism is about making profit. They don't care where they're making that profit. So because already we have good infrastructure and already we have the youngest population growing in the entire world, like Africa is the youngest, that means that we already have the two main things. The only thing left is labor. Labor in Europe and labor in South Africa are nowhere near each other. So if we give those incentives to those companies who are trying to invest, they are going to invest. It's just that we also need to do our part. We need to negotiate well and don't steal the money. The money needs to go where it's supposed to go. Because here you're not just stealing state resources, you're stealing money from China. You think those guys are just going to be happy and let you steal their money? They want to build a plant and you're telling them, the money is gone. The money is gone. It's a completely different ball game. But if we leverage it enough, the position that we are in as Africa and South Africa in particular, when it comes to the infrastructure that we have, when it comes to the population also, the education, we have one of the best educated people in Africa. People come from all over the world to study in South Africa. We can also have less labor compared to Europe, of course. I'm not saying we should rip people off, but I'm saying compared to Europe, our labor will be less. All of those are incentives in which our leaders need to use when they go to those countries and when they go to attract investments from those countries.
So someone is raising quite an important thing, which is the economy. Yes. So abantu abamnyama, they own less than 1% of the South African economy, and the rest of the 99% goes to foreigners and to abelungu here. So how do we change structures and ensure that Africans have got access to the economy and to building industries and actual power? Because in all these conversations, these G20 conversations, we're just the slave labor. We're not actually getting as much as they're gonna get from these deals.
That's true. That's a very good question. I will definitely have to check those numbers. I don't think it will be 99 and 1, but the majority is definitely all owned by conglomerates. Sorry. But here's the thing. There's things that we wish and there's things that are realities, and we need to bridge the gap. We're not just going to jump from not having something to having everything. But having leaders in place who are thinking long-term is very important. I'll give you one example. The reason why China is able to do everything that it can do is that they are willing to pay the short-term pain and gain in the future. Why? First of all, there are no 4 years, 5 years elections in China. They make a plan for 50 years and they will stick to that plan. But with our kind of governments or our kind of governing is that they need to do what the people want now. So if they want votes, they will give you, for example, 350s, and they will keep giving you because they want votes. So they're using now a large amount of the money that's supposed to be used for development just to get votes. They will do anything everybody wants to make everybody happy so that everybody can vote for them. Now, I'm not saying we should change and become like China, but we need to have leadership that can balance this out. What we need to do is that when we are getting investments and we are getting upskilling, we need to then use that into our advantage as a momentum. So if, for example, you have, let's say, a company like BYD comes to South Africa and build a huge plant to assemble their cars and build their cars, right? We are going to be the one who are building those cars, the black people, right? What the government needs to do, it needs to say, we are going to give tax incentives to anybody who builds a car in South Africa. You're not going to pay tax for the first 5 years. We are going to fund you with this much. So what you're doing is you're creating an environment of people who can be entrepreneurs instead of workers. But that has to be provided by the government. And the government can then say, we are no longer going to be buying Toyotas and Ford and whatnot for everything about the government. We're going to be buying cars made in South Africa. So as a producer of that car, you already have a huge customer which can buy in bulk. Imagine the Department of South African Police, imagine hospitals, imagine all of those only buying South African branded cars. In 15 to 10 years, that car would have developed and be able to compete with the outside world. That's what you do. You do the same thing with cell phones. You say, if you're taking a government cell phone, you only take this brand. What that does is that you are supporting the local ones. And people are going to go there and compete, because if I had that weight, if I open a car company, The government is not gonna, I'm not gonna pay tax for 5 years. They're like, yeah. You're like, and then on top of that, I'll be given how much? They're like 5 million. Many people will come forward. Some will fail. We need to accept that. But you're going to create an environment now of people who are entrepreneurs, people who know that they have their government to back them up. If you look at the amount of cars that we buy from Ford, from Benz, from BMW, and you look at that money, if that money was being invested in a local car, let's say when it starts, that car is not very good, maybe it breaks down every now and then, but we just keep supporting it and we keep regulating it. In 15 to 10 years, that car will be world class. There's no way that we're going to start something and that something is going to grow and compete if us as government and us as a country are not supporting it. We also need to teach people to be patriots. One thing about China is they love their Chinese products and they're proud of their Chinese products. But me and you right now, I'm using a Samsung. You probably might be using an iPhone or an Android. But there is Mobicel, which is a South African company, but nobody uses that. That's the thing. So if we start to champion those, if you're buying a second phone, buy a South African brand. If you're buying something secondary, buy a South African one. Over time, those companies start to have enough money that they can compete. And through that, we start to get to own a larger share of the economy. But if we are not doing that, then we can't jump from this and now we become owners. We can't. It can't happen that way.
I think at this point, I'm wondering who owns Mobicel.
It's a good question. It's a good question. Another thing is that I've realized that some people will be like, oh, but it's a white person. To me, I'm a patriot enough to say, as long as this person is South African and they're spending their money here, I'm more happy to spend it on them than to spend it on Mark Zuckerberg and somebody who's elsewhere. I used to say the same thing about petrol. I used to prefer buying it from Sasol. Why? Because it's a South African brand. I don't care who owns it, I'm like, I don't know much, but I do know that paying here and paying here, this is a South African company. Being a patriot, it helps. Buying local, it helps because that's how you support those brands. Even clothing, if it's possible for people to buy the local ones, that's how you grow. But people who will bypass the local one and go and buy the other one, and then they will come back and be like, why aren't there South African brands? And I'm like, because you don't support them. They're there, you just don't support them. So we have to also be patriots. The government can do its part, but us as people as well, we need to do our part.
I'm so glad this comment has come on the stage. Thank you. Mm-hmm. We need to care about ownership because I feel like Abelung have always been privileged. So it's easy for them to own a Mobicel because they had the resources. We haven't had resources to build our own things. So if we're going to support Mobicel, we're just supporting white privilege and our suppression even some more. What do you think of that?
It's a good point, but let's look at the choices that we have. Let's say South Africa in general, the second phones, because I know that Mobicel might not be the best example to use, but let's say we all buy 2 phones, for example, and let's say the market that or the amount of money that we're spending on a second phone, whether it's a those not very smartphones ones, whichever one it is, let's say it's 100 billion a year, right? And let's say the only option of a South African brand is Mobicel. Now, you can be saying that, but if by buying that, we're supporting white privilege. You are partially true. But which one is better? Is it better for us to spend that money buying a cell phone made by Huawei or made by Apple or made by Google, which is manufactured outside and then shipped in? Or is it better for us to buy it from this South African company, even though we don't know the full ownership of it, but it's manufactured here, assembled here? When that little company, I hate to use brands, I don't even know why I chose Mobicel, but when that little company opens a second factory, it's employing South Africans. When it opens a third country, it's employing South Africans. So before we get to the point in which we have multiple brands of cell phones, of cars that are owned by Black people, supporting a brand that is producing those things in South Africa, that's already part of empowerment and part of being a patriot. That's why I'm saying that we're not going to go from not having everything to having it all. It's a slow moving thing, but the government needs to play a huge part of creating the environment, which makes it easier for Black people to be entrepreneurs. They need to say, if you create this thing in South Africa, the government will 33% of the government purchases will only be on South African products. As a producer, I already know that I have a market. I have someone who's going to back me up. We can get loans at a much lower rate. Things like that. Also, China has a central bank that gives loans to these companies. In South Africa, we don't have such. But this just shows you that when the government is involved in supporting homegrown companies, this helps a lot when it comes to those companies growing and become competitive all across the world. Look at BYD, look at Huawei. All of them started small in China, got supported, and now they're taking over the entire world. So I think that's where we need to move to and focus as leadership of like the countries here in Africa and as South Africa, who is the gateway of the rest of Africa.
Is it not a bit idealistic to say you're patriotic and you support these white-owned businesses when the whites don't support black-owned businesses? You know how even the Jews do it. They keep it amongst themselves. They make sure that the money circulates around themselves. So why is it that as Africans, our money must circulate to empower them, but their money, I mean, white people, for instance, could be supporting MOYA podcast and even African Point of View, just putting in money just to invest in it, but they don't unless they're gonna get ownership.
Yeah.
So you are supporting them, but you're not gonna get ownership. But the other way around, they don't play that game. They know.
Yes. So what happens is that you gain more power. It's like power compounds. So my point is this. Let's say you are to choose between a phone made and assembled in America or one made and assembled in South Africa. I will always choose the ones assembled in South Africa, even if me personally won't benefit from that brand. Why? Because my brothers and sisters and cousins are employees of that assembly plant. And if the market grows, yes, we're going to be making some people rich. I get that. But when the market grows, they grow the factories. Of course, many people look at that and they feel like, sorry, I just need to about that. But yeah, many people look at that and think that, okay, that's empowering one side of the thing. It's prolonging the problem. But my point is, we are still going to spend that money anyway. It's better to spend it in South Africa. And because we have BEE, some of those companies have black ownership. But over time, as we grow, we can then start to have entrepreneurs who are black. But it's not going to happen immediately. Let's say I start a car right now. I start a car, I just open up, I have maybe, I don't know, $1 million, and I start a car company. And then I fail to sell a single car. People are looking at my car and they're like, yeah, no, I'm just going to get a Benz. I'm gonna close shop in a couple of months. I don't have any backing. So, but over time, if we get empowered enough, we can then have the backing of the government, for example, and the backing of the people, and then we can grow and then expand. So it's kind of like choosing the better devil in a way. It doesn't help us directly, but I will do anything to keep jobs in South Africa. Let me give you an example. Starlink, right? Starlink wanted to come into South Africa, and South Africa was saying BE, and Starlink was saying no. One of the biggest problems about something like Starlink is that it's made and assembled overseas. You don't need anyone to install it. You buy it, you put it on your roof, you switch it on, right? If Starlink was to come and take half of the business, that business was going to be taken from Telkom, Vuma, Fiber, all of these South African brands, right? Now, I don't own anything in those companies, but I would rather have those ones existing because I know that there are black people who are employed by those companies. When those companies lose market share to Elon Musk, who is in the USA, in which when Starlink breaks, he's not even going to employ anyone to fix it. He's just going to be like, press this button and reset. Then to me, it's like, I would rather have Telkom, Vodacom, and all of this existing and keeping market share than to send my money directly to the United States. So that's what I'm saying. And then over time, with the government help of creating an environment to build entrepreneurs, we can start to have black ones. We already have a couple of black brilliants in South Africa. It's just that I think we don't talk enough about them. We don't put them out there. We need to also be very good at that. There are people who are doing good things in technology, good things in clothing and brands, good things
in... The team might be having a network issue, so we'll just wait for that to resolve itself. My next question to him is that, Iwariam, is that, oh, there you go, you come back, you're back, ne? My worry in all of this is that why are we fighting for jobs and not for ownership? When do we start fighting for ownership? Because I don't want a job. I want my business to be empowered. I can give other people jobs. I don't mind. But the power, I know where the power is. So why are Black South Africans so fixated on this idea of they bringing us jobs instead of building our own economies?
Well, I think it still comes back to the point I was trying to make. We can't jump from not having anything to having everything. It doesn't work like that. China didn't start by owning everything. They started by jobs. The jobs grew the economy. They used the economy to invest in their people, and then their people became entrepreneurs, and then they became owners. We need to be practical. We can't do wishful thinking. That's why I said there is what we want and there's reality, and we need to merge the two. We are on our way to ownership, but it doesn't happen overnight. So what I'm trying to say is that instead of sending the money to the US, would you rather do that, or would you rather support something which is local, which provides jobs? I'm not saying jobs are better than ownership. But what I'm trying to say is, if I'm given a choice, send every money that is made in South Africa to the US, or send it to a local. At this moment in time, I'm not even going to check which one is the local. If the local is a Black-owned company or something like that, then definitely that makes a lot of sense. We're going to support each other. But the second best option, is it South African? Yes. Is it employing people? Is it providing livelihoods to people? Yes. Then I'm going to support that one. I don't know if we're having a connection or a delay.
Can you hear me? No, I think
yeah,
I was just muted. Can you? Okay, cool. So let's tackle this question on screen now. What does Mr. T think about nationalization and indigenization with a sovereign wealth fund on local minerals, just like the Scandinavian countries? I'm sure you understand.
Yeah, I do. It's a very good idea. I think there are certain countries that have tried it and it worked. There are certain countries that tried it and they were sanctioned, but it didn't fail because it doesn't work. So I think having a sovereign wealth fund is a good idea. Can we afford it right now? It depends. We need to take some of the pain. So the money that will go to the wealth fund will be money that could have been used to fix potholes, money that could have been used to fix something else. But I agree, we definitely need to have a sovereign wealth fund that we can use to invest in ourselves. That one, 100% agree.
And then we're going to go into that topic that we can't say the name properly, and we're going to skit around it. For those, because some people were upset at the ANC for that case that they had against those other people where there's heavy things going on in that country. So, and I hope you guys in the audience can hear what we're talking about. So because of YouTube and the things, we want to talk about the things, but we don't want them to pick up what we're talking about. So can you explain to us why it was important for our government to take that stand? And why possibly other people would be pissed off?
So with that country that cannot be named, the country that has a star on its flag in the Middle East, the case that we took to the ICJ, the reason why that is important is because, you see, we are paying the price for that. But if you were to ask me, was that worth it? My answer is yes. And the reason is this. When you see a fire starting over there, and you say, well, it's not going to get to me. And you're forgetting that before 1994, the fire was here. And other people did a lot to put that fire out. A lot of people don't understand how much the blockade and the boycott of South African goods helped to literally change the minds of the apartheid government. A lot of people were involved in that. People boycotted South African goods. People removed South Africa from international institutions and things like that. And this definitely helped to change the situation for us. Now, one of the last clear colony is the situation that is happening over there in Palestine. I'm not going to say the other name, just in Palestine. Now, the reason why for South Africa it's an important thing to get involved in is because what is happening there is apartheid, clear apartheid. We haven't forgotten what apartheid feels like. So I think it was a moral thing to do. We knew we were going to pay the price. We are being kicked out of AGOA right now because of that. It's one of the biggest reasons why. We are being accused of a lot of things, and that is just a blowback from that case. But the one thing that has given us, that case given us, is a huge win on the diplomatic side of things. Trust me, everywhere now where you go across the world, whenever you find people who know that you're South African, they go, "Oh, you're South African." You're like, "Yeah." They're like, "Yeah, no, we love you." Like that thing that you did was very brave. So that tells you that the way people view South Africa definitely improved because of that brave stand. Now we continued that brave stand when it comes to Donald Trump and the G20. And you saw the rest of Africa saying, this is the first time that an African country has ever stood up against the United States. So there's certain things in which we can't sell those things for money, And when we weighed the impact of our choice and not doing anything about it, when that fire starts there and we say we are too far away, that fire is not going to get to us. When it's done there, by the time it gets to us, there will be nobody left to help us. So that was important for us. We didn't do anything to them. We didn't do anything physically. We didn't join the war or anything. We just took them to court, which is something that we are obligated by law, international law, to do.
They can hear us. Big Brother's watching. So we're just going to wait for Mr. T's network to come back. Sabotage. Thank you to everybody bringing in the questions. They're important. Sabotage. Why won't Mr. T?
I can see, yeah, they've been doing that to a lot of my videos.
Yeah,
So I had to see.
even me. You're making me feel so good about it because no one has actually ever articulated it so well. I mean, I felt good and I was like, it's positive. But I know that some of the good blacks were like, no, now they're messing it up for us. And, and you know what's so fascinating is that there's a big anti-Ramaphosa sentiment. However, these moves with that country and with Donald Trump, it brings in another perspective of the man, right? So what do you think? What's happening? Because we thought that he's controlled by Mahuate. So
So what I would say is that I think within South Africa, definitely those who have who control the economy have the ear of the government. That happens everywhere. It's not just in South Africa. And we understand that. But when it comes to principles, mostly these principles that have to do with the struggle, mostly of apartheid, you can query the government in many other ways. But when it comes to that one, I was standing 100% behind them. And it's not just me. A lot of people joined that case. I think at this moment, we have 19 countries that are behind us with that case. Other countries have now opened more cases against the US, against countries in Europe for supporting that G-side that is happening over there. And then with the Donald Trump thing, when he came out with tariffs and hit everybody with tariffs, countries that said no to him are countries in BRICS. It was Brazil, they were hit with 50% tariffs. It was India, right now they have 50% plus tariffs. It was China. China literally said, we're not going to play by these rules. And South Africa. A lot of countries, including European countries, they bent the knee and then they accepted whatever Trump was giving them. But that ability for a small country like South Africa with a 400 plus billion dollars GDP, standing to a country with $27 trillion, everybody was like, wow. So you can stand up for yourself. And I think on that part, that's why you saw that there was a rally behind the flag. Everybody was supporting this G20. There were a few people who had issues with it, people who didn't understand it, but everyone was like, yeah, we will get back to our problems later. For now, we are behind our government when it comes to this. And I think that spirit definitely helps. But of course, the government also needs to give something back. It needs to be positive. It needs to reduce the amount of crime, the amount of corruption and things like that. So it really helped to bring everyone together when it comes to that situation of taking that country to the ICJ and also standing up to Donald Trump.
They say time flies when you're having a good time. We're almost about to wrap up. Right? Can you see it went so quickly? Guys, we're wrapping up at 8. If you've got any questions, please, can you bring them through? Then, Mr. T, we want to talk about security, South Africa security going forward. mean?
Now, when it comes to security, I don't know if you guys have been following the news, but today the United States just hijacked an oil tanker that was coming from Venezuela going to Cuba. Now, about, I think, June, the United States attacked Iran together with that country in the Middle East that cannot be named. Now, before then, we saw this country called Armenia and Azerbaijan going at it. We saw India and Pakistan going at it. Now, in Africa, South Africa has a good military, but it's underfunded. Now, that is a fact, no matter how you look at it. We've been cutting down the budget of the South African army for a couple of years now, mostly because we are just prioritizing things like healthcare, things like schools and things like that. But because now South Africa is raising its head when it comes to a lot of things against Trump, against that country in the Middle East, this puts us in an awkward position because can we back it up? Can we really stand up for ourselves when it comes down to it? Because when it comes to geopolitics, there's no overlord, there's no principal's office. If the United States was to come and say they are attacking, trust me, they will be attacking. And there's no way we can say, hey, do you see what they're doing? Many people will say China and Russia will come and protect us. And I doubt that, because we have examples of countries that are huge allies of both China and Russia that were attacked by the United States, including Iran. And they didn't really do much. They didn't go there and protect them or fight for them. Iran lost about 6 major general military heads, wiped out by that country in the Middle East. The United States came with 3 B-2 bombers, dropped those bombs on those nuclear sites. And China just condemned, and then they sent a cargo ship, which I think it was going to be used for the leadership to escape. Yes, afterwards, they are now supporting them with some of the parts of the missiles and things like that. But when it comes to it, no one will ever come to protect South Africa. That's not going to happen. Those countries are so far away that by the time they send their aircraft carriers and whatnot, it's going to be too late. So I think on that part, I made a video about this talking about nuclear weapons, because South Africa used to have nuclear weapons. And if you check countries that have nuclear weapons, they don't get invaded. And that has been a fact. When you look at people who were thinking about getting nuclear weapons, most of them got destroyed. If you look at Iran, I mean, Iran didn't get destroyed, but it got attacked. If you look at Iraq, if you look at Libya, all of those were attacked because they didn't have nuclear weapons. But if you look at North Korea, everybody has been talking about how dangerous North Korea is, but nobody has ever done anything to them. So what I'm trying to say here is that South Africa needs to take its security more seriously, because we're creating enemies. We're creating strong enemies like Trump, like that country in the Middle East. You've seen what they have done to Lebanon. So I think on that case, South Africa definitely needs to strengthen some of these areas where we are weak. We are underfunded our military. Our border security is not very great. Our maritime patrol is weak. We saw the general coming out and talking about that. We also have a slow response to crisis. When there was a crisis in Mozambique, it took us a while to come together and get our military together and go there and assist. Our power grid also was a bit vulnerable. We had load shedding. We're improving on that area, and also police capacity and corruption. So if we are going to be outspoken in the world stage, we also need to make sure that we can back it up. We need to produce more of our weapons. We used to be a huge exporter of weapons, but right now we are even struggling to service the ones that we have. Denel, if you look at what happened over there, it's terrible. So I feel like we need to be more patriotic. We shouldn't feel like it's somebody else's duty to protect us. We need to be able to do well by ourselves and be able to back up when we are saying no to Trump. Because look at what's happening to Venezuela right now. The United States has military blockade now against Venezuela. They can't send out their oil. They took their oil carrier today. They literally just sent and took it and said, what are you going to do? They threatened the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and said, leave with your family or else. So that tells you that there's no overlord in the world. There's no principal here. There's no taking you to the prefect here. You need to be able to protect yourself. You need to back what you're saying with military power. So I think after we've stabilized our economy, we need to start thinking about those when it comes to security of South Africa. Because South Africa right now, we are in the forefront of a lot of fights. We are fighting against the IMF, for the rest of Africa. We are fighting for humanity against that country in the Middle East. We are fighting against bullying from Donald Trump. But what will we do if we start sending aircraft carriers? Are we going to go and cry to China, go to cry to Russia? Because that's not how it works, you know? So I think on security, we definitely need to start prioritizing that. I'm not saying we should divert all of the money to that. We're not literally like under threat immediately, but that's one of the points in which we need to strengthen. And it will allow us to have more say in Africa. When there are conflicts happening, we'll be able to say, no, guys, calm down, sit, talk. It's very good to be a mediator when you can now take out the stick. You can use the carrot, but if they're not listening, you can say, hey, and then everyone can be like, okay, help us to get rid of terrorism. Help us getting rid of this. Look at what's happening in West Africa right now. It's madness. Countries are leaving ECOWAS. Nigeria is not secure. They have issues in the north of Nigeria. We have Trump saying he's going to come in and do strikes inside Nigeria. So that just tells you that Africa as a whole, our security is not in our hands. That's why other people are able to come and influence us. Yes, South Africa has a stronger military than most of us. That's why the rest of SADC is more stable compared to West Africa and East Africa. That's mostly because of South Africa, but we can strengthen that. And then the more stable SADC gets, the more stable we are. When you are stable, business can happen, economies can grow.
Apologies for the network issues, guys. You know how the things work. The more juicy the topic, the more silencing a topic needs, the more glitches there will be in the welcome back. Yes, let me hand over to you. Yes, we are used to being the naughty kids.
Yeah, true. So that's what I was saying, to say the more we invest in our security, the more SADC will be more stable. We saw what almost happened in Mozambique. Many people don't understand how close that was to being a disaster. Because if that group, which was starting in the north of Mozambique, I think it was a couple of years back, which is funded by Al-Shabaab, if they had been successful in taking over a large part of Mozambique, most of the people were going to flee into South Africa. That was going to create instability. You can't even vet them. Our border is not very secure. So whenever there's issues, we need to be able to respond. Of course, we need to be invited by the government of that country, just like we were in Mozambique, but we need to have the capacity to go and put out these fires before they become an inferno. Because if you allow them to burn, even if they're burning in Congo and you're like, we're very far away from Congo, if everything gets destabilized in Congo and all of those people move south to Zambia, Zambia becomes destabilized. And then they move to Botswana, Namibia, and Zimbabwe. Now, when they're coming to our borders and we need help, we're like, guys, come and help us. They're gone.
Sorry.
They're not there.
I'm here.
Yes. So when it comes to security, I think we need to prioritize that. We need to prioritize our military. Many generals have come up to say we are underfunded, guys. I think one of them came out and said it feels like sabotage. You know, our coastline is not well patrolled. So on that one of security, I think South Africa needs to be serious about its security.
I'm so sorry about the lights here.
It's okay.
But we were wrapping up. I'm just going to quickly turn it on again. And then I want to check if anybody else has got any questions, or we can start wrapping up. It has been such an interesting conversation. I just wonder, because we hear that Botswana has got an army base, America, things like that, right? And doesn't that bring the danger a little bit closer? Let me just quickly do this, sorry. Does that not bring the danger a little bit closer?
It does. With that one of Botswana, it's been something that the South African government and Botswana have been in conversation about. So we are aware of what happens there. It's not a fully fledged military base. So the United States has more than 800 military bases all across the world. The closest area where we know that they do have access from time to time is definitely in Botswana. And like you're saying, you know, we can't allow that to just happen, but we can't control other countries and their agreements. So we just need to make sure that we keep a close eye on that. And the thing is, if the United States wants to come for us, it's not going to come from Botswana. The United States can hit us from the United States. They literally did that to Iran. They have bases around Iran. But when those B-2 bombers came, they didn't come from those bases. They literally bragged and said that they left in the morning. went and hit a run and flew back without ever touching the ground, and they had lunch here at home. They said we are the only country that can do that. So we shouldn't really be focused on Botswana in that base. We should focus on making sure that we are stronger than what we are currently.
Can you see that question on screen?
What about the criminal America is sending to Swaziland? I feel like some of the people who are watching us here also watch my videos because I made a video about this. Yeah, that's very concerning. That's very concerning. But like I said, Swaziland is a sovereign country. We can't literally just tell them what to do, but we can put a little bit of pressure. We can try to find more visibility on what is being agreed upon. Like, you know, because if those people escape, it's a huge likelihood that they might end up in our country. So we definitely do need to kind of like understand what is happening regarding that, who those people are. And I mean, as a good neighbor, it makes sense to share, to say, hey, if you're concerned about these people, these are the people, this is why they're here, this is why we are keeping them. And if they ever escape, we're going to let you know. And, you know, we can't really control what other governments do, but as one of the biggest or the strongest or the most influential countries in SADC, we do have a little bit of leverage. But what the other countries are making deals with the United States, we can't really get involved because remember, that was one of the things that they had to do for the tariffs to be removed. So they're doing it for the economy. This is not me saying that I stand with the government of that country. I'm not involved in that. But in geopolitics, you need to look at any problem from your view and from the other person's view. That's the only way you'll get to understand. And both of you can then meet in the middle.
So, you know, you were saying how dangerous the situation is, especially with America and the country that we can't mention.
Yes.
And we're seeing that the Department of Home Affairs has allowed a lot of people from that other country into Cape Town specifically. And then there's the talk of the independent Cape Town. Is that talk not extremely dangerous for us?
It is. It is. It's just that we're not in the rooms of the government. We don't know what these people are deciding or the state security, what it is doing. You never hear much from the state security, but they do a pretty good job when it comes to things that can affect South Africa. But we definitely need to keep an eye out. That country is very, very good at keeping a grudge, and they will keep that grudge going for years and decades. They will get you in the end. So because we took them to the ICJ, definitely they have a beef with us. So we definitely need to keep checking people who are pushing these things, who are pushing for independence, who are pushing for division in the country. We need to keep an eye on them because if they can't come and do it themselves, they will get somebody inside the country to do it. So I just feel like as a country, we just need to be aware of what they're trying to do. They sent a couple of planes that had Palestinians. I'm pretty sure you know that, just before G20. And the investigations found
I thought I had sabotage. This guy, his sabotage is on the next level. Let's give him a second because we're about to wrap up and say bye. There we go. Yes, you were saying?
Yes, I was saying that there's a bit of feedback. I was saying that there was a plane that landed in South Africa just before the G20, and we found out that the plan was to send more of them during the G20 to just cause havoc in our country. So they have the capacity to cause havoc. We just need to make sure that we expose it and everybody's aware that they might do that, so that when they do come for us, we close hands together. We hold each other and say, no, you are the enemy, not us, because they will infiltrate that way. We need to be able to say, this is what we want. And if you're coming with divisions and whatnot, we're going to point you out and we're going to put the spotlight to you to say, why are you doing this? Why are you looking for divisions? Who is funding you? And things like that. It can definitely help to expose some of these schemes. For now, I don't think they're going to come for us physically. They might cause disturbances. They might cause division, just to keep us busy in the country and to keep, everyone focused on the wrong things. But at the end of the day, if we know what we want as a country, if we know where we want to be, we will be able to spot those who want to divide us. We will be able to spot the enemy when they're coming from far. The problem in South Africa, so many divisions. Divisions on race, divisions on religion, divisions on ethnic groups, divisions on tribe, so many divisions. So it kind of like makes it easy for them to infiltrate us. But So far, I think we're not doing a bad job when it comes to keeping ourselves as one.
Any parting shots as we say goodbye to you, and thank you for enlightening us and sharing your views?
I will say that geopolitics affects us. It affects us all. Right now, this ship that just got hijacked, that can increase the price of oil. And in no time, you might see that when you're going to buy petrol. So things that are happening across the world do affect you. So it's a good idea every now and then to just keep an ear out to hear what is happening out there and try to find out how does that affect me. That's what I talk about mostly on my channel. I talk about, it's called the African point of view for a reason. It's about what's going on over there, what is our point of view, and how are we impacted by this. And I would just wish for more and more people to get a bit more interested in geopolitics, because at the end of the day, we are not living in isolation. We're living in the world and we're interconnected. So decisions that are made elsewhere, wars that are started elsewhere, will affect us in the end. So that's what I'll say. And thank you very much for having me on your live stream. It was an amazing time here talking about these things.
Thank you so much. And guys, please go subscribe to the channel, African Point of View. Your channel is so important, Mr. T. It is so important because we in South Africa, we are into groove and we're not paying attention to what's going on in the world, and things keep happening to us because we're not paying attention to what's happening in the world. So if people follow your channel, it's important because you tell us, Uti, this thing that's happening, because it becomes intellectual jargon to us on the ground. So your work is extremely important in educating us and politics, just conscientizing us so that we understand why the things are happening. I'm going to speak to you backstage, but let me say goodbye to the audience. Thank you to everybody who was joining us from Facebook, from Twitter, from MOYA on YouTube, and African Point of View was streaming that side. Please, guys, go like, share, and subscribe. Let's grow these communities where we get to learn and educate ourselves. Umoya Ulight, Umoya Upright. We'll see you again next time. Thank you. Thank you.